Yeah, well, thanks so much for coming. It's so funny to see adults. I mean, like I haven't had a mostly room full of adults in a long time, and it's fun because you can kind of get away with a lot more with kids when you're just like reading to them in a small circle, and they usually entertain me as much as. And so I don't think y'all are going to do that. So like I need to. This is very very nice. I don't get around adults that much anymore, so this will be interesting. My name is Matthew Paul Turner, and I've been writing for a really long time, and it's only in the last few years have I transitioned to writing children's books, and certainly parenting sparked that, but also wanting to have and provide for my kids positive, life-giving words that I could read over them. I just found myself, anytime I would read to my kids before bedtime, and we would get to the book that was remotely about faith, and I would find myself editing in my head, or editing the words I said as I went along, or I just found it clumsy and hard to read, and my kids just really preferred Llama Llama, or another, where the wild things are, or because it was just more exciting, and so I rhyme. Ironically, as a teenager, I would carry around a notebook because I wanted to be a songwriter early on, and I filled it up with absolutely horrendous poetry and song lyrics and rewritten pop songs that were about Jesus. I rewrote George Michael's Faith like 3 times, and everyone thought I was so cool for being able to do that, and so but rhyming has always been something that I've enjoyed, especially when it comes to children's books, because as a parent, you want those books to read themselves eventually. You want them to roll off your tongue. Because by the time you get to book number 3 and it's bedtime, you really want your kids to go to bed. And so, and they're saying one more, Daddy, one more, And so, my hope was to create literature for kids that gave parents positive, and gave people who love kids positive and affirming, inclusive language to speak over them. And so when I first started writing my children's book, my wife Jessica was the one who said, you need to write a children's book. And so I decided one day, 3 or 4 months after this initial encouraging conversation from her, I said, okay, I'm going to Starbucks and I'm going to go write a children's book. And I wrote some terrible stuff. But from all of the terrible, I spent 3 or 4 moments writing some terrible stuff. And then eventually I landed on the idea of light. And I thought, what if could I create a book that spoke about that first moment that light came into existence, and what that was like, and how that changed everything. And is there a way for me to talk about how that light is in all of us? And so God made light, or when God made light, which looks like this now, but after I finished writing, and literally, people think that you're only writing 600 to 1,000 words, you must be able to fly through these things. No, they take, from a length of time, they take almost as long as a regular book to write. It's just it's a different type of writing. I will work on one line for a really, really long time, and it's hard for me to leave it, but I'll come back and edit it several times. But so by the time I finished the first draft, it was 6 months later. And I sent it to one editor who I had worked with before, and she loved it. So I sent it to my agent, and my agent, we went through the whole process of creating a proposal. And all 11 publishers that we sent it to said no. In fact, one of them came back and said no twice. And some of them were like, we're not really doing children's books as much as we used to. Like, we don't have the budget. Some of them were like, Matthew Paul Turner isn't somebody we want to work with. And one of them even asked if I'd be willing to put my wife's name on it as opposed to my name. So, which I was like, Jessica was actually the one that said no to that. I was okay with it. I wanted a contract. So Jessica at the same time, Jessica was working on a book deal of her own, and she landed a deal shortly before I got my last no. And she said, we are going to self-publish your book with my advance. And 15 months later, we did that, and God Made Light came out, and we printed 5,000 copies, and we sold 4,892 of them. And all the publishers that came back and said, hey, and one of them, the one that was interested in the very beginning, the one who came back and said no twice, I went with them, and so, meanwhile, in the process of that conversation, I wrote these words. You, when God made you all shiny and new. An incredible you. A you all your own. A you unlike anyone else ever known. And I'm sitting in a grocery store parking lot typing these words into my phone. And because I find that when you're writing, when you add a physical element to the process, it sparks creativity, or it keeps your brain, it keeps blood flowing, and so it gives like your brain the ability to be creative and think, but it also, it helps me like feel the passion of the words. God forbid if anyone was to ever record me in the parking lot at Publix as I'm writing, because I am literally, I walk around in like a square, and I am with my phone out, and I'm talking to myself sometimes, and I'm like searching for things. And so this is there's a real physical element for these books. I remember the day when I wrote these words. Give me a second. You, God sees you. God delights in what is and sees only what's true. That you, yes, you, in all of your glory, bring color and rhythm and rhyme to God's story. So be you, fully you, a show-stopping review. Live your life in full color, every tint, every hue. Discover, explore, have faith, but love more. And learn and relearn all that God made you for. And I broke down, and I still tear up in that line, because it's writing it for every kid and every parent who feels like they never fit in, for the kids who don't feel like they fit in now, because it's incredible to me how often books about faith don't affirm a child and celebrate the delight that I believe God has in all of us. I mean, why do this? Why go through the process of creating if you're not going to delight? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But as somebody who grew up in a very fundamentalist home, I don't know if you guys know my story. I wrote a book called Church years ago, and I had Barbies burned in front of me to explain hell. Like, I mean, I grew up in a really weird church that and everyone's like, was it like a small? No, we had like 1,000 people come to our church every Sunday. So it wasn't small. So anyway, I'm writing for myself. I'm writing to the child that I was 35 years ago. I'm writing for my kids because as a parent, my biggest goal was I wanted to introduce God to them in a healthy, happy, holy way that only created positive experiences and was a good thing. It was a thing that pushed them to be better and be their best and do good things. And so when this book, the beautiful thing, like when I finished the words, I sent this off to the publisher, and this is what I sent it off to my editor. Her name is Shannon, and Shannon has been a supporter of my work for forever. And so what was when she got it, she was like, "I want to publish this book first, and then we'll publish your second one." And a couple months later, I get the contract, and they start sending me illustrator ideas, and they land on David Catro. And are you all familiar with David Catro? He is a New York Times best-selling illustrator. He has illustrated 80 books, and not one of them is about faith. Very much all of them are positive and encouraging, and just encouraging kids to be themselves and be proud of who they are, and just delightful books. And he has such a distinctive way of illustrating exaggerated, colorful characters. And when he signed on to this project, I was ecstatic. And a few months later, I was introduced to this little girl, and I had nothing to do with the little girl who stars in my book. And I absolutely cannot imagine these words being illustrated or being celebrated by any other character than this little girl. And she has been as big a part of this book's success as the words. In fact, I think that she's probably the first reason people look at it, because it's funny, like being in the writing world, I knew that, especially this was in 2013, there was a study done that I remember Entertainment Weekly writing about, and it was about the idea of how such a large percentage of children's books they showcase no people of color, and that they either go with animals or the little white boy. And that was one of the first things that I said, Shannon, I told Shannon, because I knew in Christian world, if you'll notice, they rarely use children. It's always animals. And animals are it's just a way for them to not face this issue. Nobody questions when you have a fox on the cover of your book, or a polar bear, or a bunny rabbit. And so I just said, like, whatever you decide, I just want you to know I want a person on the book. This is about God creating me. It's not about God creating a bunny rabbit. Which is fine. I have no problem with God creating a bunny rabbit. But this is about a human, and I want a human on the cover. And so David illustrated, and when he sent us the layout of the book, my editor and I had 4 changes we wanted, and we got none of them. He said no to every one. And I said, you know what, Shannon? He's done this 80 times. Let's go with it. Like I trust him. And so that's the backstory. David and I have become close, but I've just real like internet conversations and like back and forths, and we hope to work together again. But it was not a. He brought my book to life. Like I gave him some words, and he really took it to a new level. And so, with all adults here, I would love if you have questions about the writing process. Like I spent the first 15, 20 years of my writing career writing like nonfiction, so I can talk about blogging. I've gotten myself in a lot of trouble with blogging, and so I can talk about that, or I can talk about the process. If you have this like dream of writing children's books, I can certainly answer those questions too. So please, let's let this be a conversation. I was planning on reading a whole bunch. Like I was planning on like sitting down in a circle with kids and reading books and then answering a few questions. So I am happy to engage this conversation. So if you have questions about any of the books or questions about the process of writing, it's been crazy to me. There are always writers who will contact somebody who has been published and whatnot, and they'll ask for advice. I had no idea how many people want to write children's books. Like it is the number of people who have approached me and asked for advice and asked for sent me emails and sent me their ideas, and it's been eye-opening to know how many people do it. And the other eye-opening thing about this experience is I had no idea to what extent people were impacted by children's books. Like I had no concept where this book would end up. And I've received letters. When God Made You has inspired more letters to me from people who have read the book than I had received in my whole career as a writer. And I'm going to share just a couple of, and without using names, but I'll just use the instances. One instance that stuck with me was a pastor in New England who said she had been sitting next to a woman who was 100 years old and about to, in her last few days. And somebody had gifted her my book in the weeks leading up to these moments. And the pastor said that she would reach for my book and point to it. And the pastor would pick it up and she would read these words over this woman and that she said that she was reading these words as she was passing over. The other story that is even I don't even get it. I got a letter from a couple from Boston, and they said Matthew, my wife and I got to spend 3 hours with our baby, and we read your book over her 3 times in that process, and that makes no sense to me how these words would encourage somebody in that situation or in facing that horrific moment. But somehow it's I don't like to I'm it's rare that I use it. It's that God's involved and does this thing, but I believe that. I really do believe that God uses art in weird ways that we don't understand, that it translates into situations and affects people in ways that I didn't plan it to. I've gotten letters from parents of children who are trans, and they said it's the first book that I have felt like I wanted to read to my kids. It encourages them to be themselves. And I get it. I get letters from gay parents. I get letters from really super conservative parents who I would not get along with, who say they read my books over their kids. And I'm like, well, awesome, because like they're getting a positive. Their kids are being spoken positive words. And so it's been crazy to see the effect and the impact that that a children's book that I thought would just be kids and make kids smile or make kids feel good, where it has gone and all the things. One friend of mine who's I traveled with her 15 years ago to Uganda. And she was the leader of the trip, and she and her husband have no children, but she was battling cancer. And she bought the book, and she read it to herself every night during chemotherapy. What? Like, I don't get that, but wow. So it's been a really, so if you do have like this idea for children's books, just know that the impact that the places that these books can go, like I've just been surprised over and over of how this book ends up in a certain spot that I never anticipated. So, any questions? Sure.
So I have a question. You may talk about this in the beginning about your writing process, but I know you talked about the published.
Yeah.
Can you go and just sit and write, or do you have to be inspired? Because you were saying it's a physical thing for you. Like, does something happen and you have a moment and you're like, okay, inspired, or can you go and sit and write something?
Yeah. That's a great question, because it's very much, you have to sit, and I have to sit and write a whole bunch of bad ideas down. Like, I'll work in the process of writing the book that came out in February, When I Pray for You. I wrote probably 6 or 7 really awful books, or not really awful, but books that just didn't pop. And I really wanted them to. And so like you force ideas, or like, and so like you have to work through the things that are going on in your head and get through those bad ideas until you get the line happens and you're like, like with this book, it was, it took me forever, because my editor was like, Matthew, because I kept sending her ideas, and she was like, I like this. I just don't know if it's this one. She goes, have you ever thought about writing about the process of prayer? And I'm like, no, I haven't. This didn't seem, it felt so Christian. Like, it felt so evangelical. And I was like, okay. But anyway, I started to jot ideas down. And all of them, like, you would laugh at some of them, or like they just didn't feel right, until I landed on the line, from the moment I saw you. Because my hope, I try to keep the books as open-ended and as inclusive as possible, because I don't want, so I try to stay away from birth language. I stay away from pronouns for God. God is God in my books. And all that stuff is very, very intentional. And so I want my book to be that for a parent of an adoptive child to be able to read it and not stumble over an idea. But I also want the person who has biological children to read it and not even think that I've stumbled over that I've had to work through that. So when I got to the book part where it's from the moment I saw you, and that works for moms and dads, because moms see their babies early on and they feel like, and dads see them, as they're coming out the canal. Like, we see pictures, but you know what I mean? So I, like, that moment, that was like, from the moment I saw you, I started to pray. And like, that was true for me. Like, that was something that I was able to relate to. And like when I got that line, I realized how much time I spend praying for my kids. Like, and it's not like, dear God, but it's, God, help them to be light today. Help them, like keep them safe. Like, or man, God, like go with them. Like be like it's like I whisper and think prayers for them as they walk away from the car to their to their classroom, and all the time. And like they're like prayers are always in my thought process, and sometimes I'm praying for myself. Sometimes I'm sighing and I'm just like, help. Like, we've all had those moments. Like, when your kid is literally melting down in the middle of Target and like people are starting to stare and like, okay, is this the thing where do I have to take my kid out? Like, is this where we're going to do this? And you're praying. And so like, but as soon as I was able to get that line, from the moment I saw you, I started to pray, big prayers and small ones. I sent God's way. I prayed as I held you when you sat in my lap. I prayed as we rocked, as you peacefully napped. Though, like, that I felt because I've done all that. And so, but yes, it's a process. Like and I think it differs for everybody, but I think that these ideas are, my next book, like the next book that comes out in February is called When God Made the World. I'd always seen the When God Made series as a as a 3-book thing, and I thought that it would be 1, 2, 3, but my publisher didn't want to do that. So, When God Made the World, when I said I would do it, I didn't realize how big of an idea I was tackling, and how difficult. Like, what do I put in? What do I include? What don't? Like, so like I had to rethink how I was going. Like, what were my limitations? What were my boundaries? What were the things I was going to sell? Like, was I going to was I going to talk about Adam and Eve? Like, was I not? And so I finally got to the place. It comes like when you get the first line. Like for me, the first line, when I know that is the thing that I wanted to do, like I can start. That's a great moment for me because that's a good jumping off point. I know some people can start like in the middle, and I just like I have to write in process, and so I want to write as the reader is going to experience it. So I landed on the line in the very beginning, before anything was. Before God started doing what it is God does, when all that existed was wide open space, God imagined a universe and began to create. And so that was a big moment for me because I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I don't mention days. I don't mention Adam and Eve. But I talk about, and God made people like you and me, people with stories, people with souls, a global family tree. And I write about the climate, and I use it as the creation story, that God. The other thing that I really hoped to do, and I don't know if I did it well, I'm sure, like this, anytime you start talking about creation, you're stepping on, it's like, I could make the conservatives really, really mad, and I could make some progressive people really, really mad because like, it's, so I allowed space, and I did not like define everything for everybody. I tried to leave the ends open so parents could offer wisdom. But so I like one of those things is I said, and with cosmic explosions, God set space in motion, causing planets to orbit their suns with devotion. And somewhere amid all that swirling light, inside a cluster of a milky white, amid the stars and the moons and the cosmic dust, God created a planet for the story of us. And so then I go through this this beautiful like God made God made planet Earth, and made daytime and climates and seasons that vary by region, and so we go through this. I go through the only thing that is like the only thing that feels familiar is the order, I guess. But it gets to be fun. Like birds are a lot of fun and animals, and then when you get to the people, and then at the end, how do I come to the conclusion was I made us a part of like taking care of creation, and like how that there's a reason for God making us, and that we're just like the mountains, giving God glory, that how we love, how we live reflects God's story, and so we'll see. It's one of those things I'm anxious to see where it all lands. But then there's another place when I talk about animals that all living creatures that God left open for them to evolve and change over time, and how how they see fit. So it's one of those things where I tried to stick to my thing, and my publisher loves it. But I'm uncertain about it. So, any other questions? You said you had one. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those words. Yes. Yeah, no. Okay. I literally, the day before I came here, I had a pastor reach out to me and ask me, "Can I take pictures of your book and put the?" And I'm like, I always say yes, like as long as you're not distributing. It's the distribution thing that people are afraid. But you know what? We are in the process. We have gotten that question a lot, and we have also heard from churches using the book. So we are actually trying to create a church resource site, on my website, and I will talk to my publisher, because that the way copyright is done, I own my copyright, but I have no right to give it away because my publisher owns distribution of all of it. David owns his illustrations, but Random House owns all. What might work, the problem is when you see that, we might be able to give the illustrations without the words, but when you put, if you could download the words and the illustrations, the publisher just freaks out about the idea that somebody is going to distribute that and give it away and whatnot. And I have less of concern about that, but but yes, I will. I'm going to talk to my publisher and see what we can do about that, because I think that is a really valid thing. You absolutely, again, my thing is you're reading a book and you're reading it to a bigger audience, of course, yeah. Well, and my wife is the business person. I'm so dumb when it comes to that kind of stuff. I mean, but my wife literally she would have she would have like 6 things to add to this, like and all that. But yes, I do think that it makes sense, and I have. Like it's funny that people reach out and ask, like because I think that I would just do it. I would just like scan the book and like put it on the as long like the only way that they like and now because the books the more popular your books get, the more I mean every day I see people having links to you can download When God Made You for free and whatever. So like it's a thing. It's kind of like internet with music and whatnot. So but yeah, please like I'm going to bring that conversation up and see what we can do, but also please scan the books or take a picture of them. Yes.
I have a question that's related to that, but I'm also a librarian. So copyright speaking, you still have the actual book in your hand when
Yep.
you're protecting that, because you have the book.
Right.
Like, so
That's exactly. She's exactly. Right. Right.
if you want to be like to have both of those things happen. If you want to feel like thinking about it, if you care about it.
Right.
So my question is sort of about your audience as an author. So we're talking a lot about religious spaces. Do you interface with the children's literature community? I used to teach children's literature at a university. We have a children's literature festival, and I don't know how many faith-related authors we've had come through there, but I know there've been some.
That has just to give you a little like backstory. Random House. I have been for these first 2 books. I was on Waterbrook Press, which is the the evangelical subdivision of Random House. Right, and so. When I pray for you, when God Made You, did really well the first week, and so showed momentum and has sold since it's come out. But then Target picked it up, and so Target took it to a new level. It's the only faith book that Target, that's on their out facing display for children's books. So it kind of, but when I told my publisher what we had planned for a marketing thing, they were like, "We got it covered," and they didn't have it covered for When God Made You. We sold out at Amazon. Took 3 weeks to get it back in, and do you know, they did the same. They made the same mistake with When I Pray for You, and it may have been the very best thing that could have happened because the very next day I got a phone call from the president of Random House. And she said, her name's Gina, and she has this really thick, New York smoker accent. It's just so, I don't even know if she smokes, but she just has that really right, Mr. Turner, And so, so to say that I am now in that process, they have now switched me to the New York office. So Rich. Yeah, it's going to be under Convergent, which is a New York-based children's, New York-based faith, but it's the progressive side of the faith war. But Random House Children's is now operating all of my press because this book has been so successful, and so it's kind of given me a new thing. So yeah, the answer is yes. I am just starting to engage those circles. Oh, I will show up. I will show up anywhere. I've done podcasts with people who are just write children's books, or they are done faith stuff. I've done both and. So absolutely. It'd be great. I'd love that. So.
I know these look, from what I could tell, to skew a little bit younger as far as content.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in your experiences in general, but I also have a 9-year-old that asks a lot of existential crisis, religious questions to me at 7:54 at bedtime, where I'm just I don't know, bud. We're gonna have to talk about that when I have brain cells. Have you thought about doing any of that kind of what kids ask about? Existential crisis.
Oh man. It's funny. I am
Why does God make people suffer? That
No, I know. I have an 11-year-old, so I just had the serious sex talk. We talk about sex a little bit before, but I literally just 2 weeks ago had the, like it, and well, he's still recovering. I was fine. Like I didn't really have any problem with it. I can talk about sex. So, but like he's still recovering. Really, Dad? Like really? Like Anyway, so but with the and it's interesting you say that. I am right now writing a foreword to a book that is directed to parents and answering all of the hard questions like those. But I have yet to think, okay, that I am the person to do that, because I feel like I need to read that book. And so because my oldest is 11, and I don't know about you all, but when you become a parent, you ask all the parents in your circle, like the old parents, the new parents, and just to get their stories. I don't take all their advice, but I want to know what they did right and what they did wrong and how that worked out for them. And and you can when I meet a child that is 15 and she's just delightful and kind, and I want to know, okay, what did you did you have any did the parents have anything to do with that? Was that natural? It's I want to know, because I want to learn, and because we're all we all feel like we're the very first parent to have to face all of these things. And when you're in that moment, I don't know is the very best answer. I say I don't know all the time. And it's so funny, because that's a break from the cycle that I was raised in. My mom and dad never did not know. They always knew, or they always had an answer that they thought they knew. So I talk to them all the time. Have I missed every sign? So I am so sorry, guys. I've gone way over time, and I literally did not see one of them. So thanks so much for being here, and thanks.